Hey, everybody, this is David Isley, Carolina's own. Looking forward to being on the Get Me Back My Pro Wrestling.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Give Me Back My Pro Wrestling.
For those who don't know, now you know, baby. This is Hot Rod Biggs, Jared, Jimmy Street. We're going to take them to the limit one more time, baby, right here on Give Me Back My Pro Wrestling.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome one more time to the Give Me Back My Pro Wrestling podcast. And I am here, as always, with my brother from the same father and mother, Jared, the Plastic Sheik Street. What's up, dude?
Hey man, not much. Just ready for this interview, man. It's looking at these questions we got laid out. It's going to be a good one.
Yeah, I mean, you know, dude, it's just like, man, it's 3 2-pagers in a row.
Yeah, man. Yeah, they intimidate me when they get into the length they are, but they're always good. So.
Yeah, definitely. Lots of great stories, lots of great people. I guess we can go ahead and say, as if they don't already know, we have Carolina's own David Isley on the show today. Very excited about that. So
yeah, man, he's worked WCW, WWF, All Japan. I mean, and numerous other places. So I mean, it's going to be some good stories.
Absolutely. And, you know, got to thank Tommy Angel for hooking this one up. You know, I like this, you know, the way that it's working right now, the domino effect of like, okay, this guy, you brought this guy on, and maybe the next guy, who knows? Who knows who will be next? So, but, you know, last episode before this is doing awesome. Once again, thank y'all so much for listening. We definitely appreciate that. You know, Rick McCord, that episode, that was just another guy that, man, he's just done everything. It's like, wow, is this the new norm for us? You know what I mean? That we're just to know that anybody is giving us their time is definitely humbling, man. Very, very humbling.
Oh, absolutely. These guys, I mean, I've said it and probably wore it out some with the listeners, but I mean, these guys just continually have been there and done that.
Yeah.
And when you hear these names that we're going to mention today, you're going to be like, man,
I know.
This guy's wrestled everybody.
Yeah, I know. It's just incredible. And again, we're so appreciative of all these gentlemen who spent their time and did their whole career and then are now spending their time with us to tell their story. You know, I'm not only glad that they give us that opportunity, but that we have that platform for them, you know. So, and all these guys truly fit the Give Me Back My Pro Wrestling motto of, you know, hey, these guys are the exact model of Give Me Back My Pro Wrestling, because they're the pro wrestling that we want to be back, to somebody to give us back. You know what I'm saying? So I think that made sense. But anyway, you all get it. It's
give
simple.
Us back this pro wrestling that we're talking about.
Yeah, give me back that pro wrestling that you had. Anyway, long story short, fun episode. Can't wait to bring him on. So I say, let's go ahead and bring him on. Why not?
Let's get to it.
All right. Hey, by the way, he's a big UNC Tar Heels fan, so I know. Let's just step aside. Yeah, we'll skirt around.
We're not even going to mention that, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, it's not that I have a problem with it. It's you, Jared. So
I know. It's my problem.
All right. Well, we'll just leave that question in the tank. We'll be right back after these messages with more from Give Me Back My Pro Wrestling and our very special guest, David Isley.
This episode is brought to you by LinkedIn. Healthcare professionals can lead their careers with LinkedIn. Discover jobs by specialty, preferred shifts, and even desired salary. From mental health therapists to radiology technicians, it's now faster and easier for healthcare professionals to find the right fit. Learn more at linkedin.com/healthcare. Side effects may include faster job placement, improved work-life balance, and increased career satisfaction.
The Hilton sale is on. Now through September 29th, you can save up to 20% on stays this fall and beyond. Long weekends, last-minute getaways, holiday gatherings. There's a Hilton stay for all of them. More moments, more experiences, more destinations. Now 20% off for a limited time because it matters where you stay. Don't wait. Book by September 29th and save up to 20% at Hilton.com. Terms apply. Hilton for the stay.
You're tuned into Auto Intelligence, live from Auto Trader, where data, tools, and your preferences sync to make your car shopping smooth.
They're searching inventory.
Oh, yeah.
They find what you need.
They're gonna find it.
You can make a budget for your wallet to help you succeed. Pricing's precise and true.
So true.
It's smarter car shopping.
Ooh.
Just for you.
Oh, it's just for you. Ooh. Find your next ride at autotrader.com. Powered by Auto Intelligence.
This episode is presented by State Farm. Having insurance isn't the same as having State Farm. It's like expecting the leadership of a team captain on the football field, but getting a sea captain. You wouldn't settle for just anything for your team. Shouldn't it be the same for your insurance? So don't settle for just any insurance when you can go with a leader. State Farm. Like a good neighbor, State Farm is there.
Are you a pro wrestling fan? Well, stop by Captain's Corner, where you can get autographed photos, cards, magazines, and figures from all of your favorite wrestling superstars of the past, present, and future. You'll also be able to participate in live signings in the weeks and months to come. Make sure to stop by Captain's Corner on Facebook and give us a holler. Remember, cheers to the working man.
All right, we are back with more from the Give Me Back My Pro Wrestling podcast. And just like we said in the intro there, we've got one of the awesome guys of this business. Some say he's a thunderfoot. Some say he's just an all-around great guy. But we know him as Carolina's own David Isley. David, thank you for being on the show with us today.
Hey, looking forward to it, guys. I'm ready to talk some old stories that I haven't talked about in a long time. I'm sure I've got some that a lot of the folks and a lot of the fans haven't heard from another perspective. So let's get into it.
Love it.
Love it, man. Yeah, that's what we're all about.
Yeah. So, Jared, we always start with your question. Kick it off, brother.
All right, David. So this question right here is just meant to kind of show the listeners and us kind of your influences or your favorite people you worked with, maybe. Give me your top 4 or top 5, like a Mount Rushmore of professional wrestlers.
That's a great question. And looking back over the time, I'm going to kind of date myself a little bit because of where I'm at in life now. But, when I was growing up, if I had to look at my top 5 Mount Rushmores at the time, definitely would have been a Wahoo McDaniel, a Jack Briscoe, definitely a Blackjack Mulligan, probably a Mr. Wrestling Tim Woods. And you have to have the Nature Boy Ric Flair in there as well. Those were probably some of the guys that I looked up to when I was starting out and just breaking into the wrestling business. But there's just so many more names that influenced me over the years. But that's a few off the top of my head that I can remember that that really because you have to understand, guys, when I was coming through, we didn't have the internet back then. We didn't have cable television till later on in the 80s. So when I was a kid growing up, all I was able to get was Mid-Atlantic Championship Wrestling with Bob Caudle and Rich Landrum and David Crockett. And sometimes on Saturday mornings, if I turned my rabbit ears just right, I could probably get a little bit of the Fuller's program out of Tennessee.
Yeah.
What a list, man. That's a great list. And when you got Wahoo McDaniel on there, man, that's a great start to it, man. It's an awesome list.
And let's be honest, David. Let's be honest, man. All you need is Mid-Atlantic when it comes down to it, right? Come on.
Well, that's very, very true because in 1975 I got my first Pro Wrestling Illustrated magazine. Somebody gave it to me when I was a junior in high school, and from that point on, I was sucked in. I started watching it on television around 1974, 75. And from that point, I was just sucked in, and it's been like that ever since.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, that sounds similar to us. We actually got into it way early in our life, but we were seeing guys like you on TV, so it was pretty awesome. So there's the circle right there. So you actually led me in a great direction there, David, and I appreciate this. Is going to be easy, man. I can tell. So my first question always starts like this. Tell us a little bit about your younger days. Where were you born? Your high school? Did you play sports? That kind of stuff?
Absolutely. So I was born in Charlotte, North Carolina in 1962. So I'm 61 years old now. I went to school in Hendersonville, North Carolina. So I was close to the Asheville Civic Center, where I actually saw the Mid-Atlantic live events, back in that time. Awesome. My father was with, at the time, Esso, which is now ExxonMobil, and we moved around a little bit from Hendersonville, North Carolina to Greenville, South Carolina. And then we spent, the last, long few years up around Charlotte, North Carolina, over into the Concord, North Carolina area is where I spent most of my time. Yeah. I technically graduated high school in Concord, North Carolina. I'm not as close to some of those folks because I moved there, when I was a junior in high school. So, the folks that I've really bonded with and keep in touch on a very regular basis are the folks from right up the road from where I live out here in Greenville, up in Hendersonville, North Carolina. So that's kind of where I was born and how it all started.
That's awesome. Yeah. Well, I'm in Mooresville now. Jared, my co-host and brother, he went to college in Monroe. So we're all about Mecklenburg County. So we all got, So we have fun and it's cool, man. I met, a guy doing grand jury and actually ended up meeting Tommy Angel through that. And then through Tommy, I've met you. So man, it's just like a big snowball. I'm so stoked about this,
It's good. It's good to reminisce about the old stories. I don't talk about them too much anymore. And, so I had to kind of get back into my memory banks a little bit and kind of pull some of that out from quite a few years ago.
Well, we thank you immensely. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So you brought it up now. You talked about getting your first magazine in high school and being enthralled by then after. Right. And obviously, I live in Mooresville now, so you probably know what I'm leading to here. Yeah. Talk about meeting Nelson Royal and getting your start in the wrestling business.
Okay, so that's a great question. So in 1984, I was working actually part-time for Ricky Steamboat at his Mid-Atlantic gym in Charlotte. Nice. And I became very, very close with Rick and his family, still very close with Rick today. Actually, he and I, his birthday is also in February, so I happened to be up in the Knoxville area back in February. So I met him and his wife and took him out for his birthday at the end of last February. So a lot of the guys were coming in there working out. And some of the names that were coming in there working out at that particular time were Downtown Denny Brown, who was a former NWA junior heavyweight champion, very close friend of mine. Hector Guerrero was a regular in there. There was an old guy by the name, an old name he went by the wrestling name in the Mid-Atlantic area called Bret Hart. That was really Barry Horowitz from the WWF. Yeah. So Danny Spivey was coming in there to work out. Scott Hall was coming in there to work out. You had Piper. So at that particular time, I was still living in Concord, but I was working for Rick at the gym in Charlotte part-time. So actually, my former tag team partner, who and I hooked up as the Thunderfoots later on, Gene Ligon. Gene ran a gym in Charlotte. So in roughly 1986. A lot of other people don't know this as well. I kind of piggyback a little bit on a story, but Nicola Roberts, who went on, to become Baby Doll here in the North Carolina area, she was coming in there, and she was using Gene's tanning beds, and her and I actually dated a few times back in the 80s, and we're still very good friends. She's married and family now, but we've still very good friends. And so Nelson Royal was actually coming in there to work out. He and his daughter Shannon, they owned the Western store up in Mooresville. So Gene knew that I had been interested in becoming a professional wrestler. And so Nelson and I got together when he was in there working out, and he told me he was going to be having tryouts up in Mooresville at his camp on his property up there in Mooresville. So that's how I met the guys that I came through camp with. You probably remember, of course, Tommy Angel, but there were others that came through the camp that I met that first day. Colt Steele. Yeah. There was a wrestler by the name of Mitch Snow who went on to become in the AWA, did some work in the AWA. Ricky Nelson, Gene's son, Brad Anderson was there. There was also another guy from Salisbury who worked underneath for the Crockett's with us. He went by the name Larry Stevens, but most people knew him by L.A. Stevens from up in the Salisbury area.
Okay.
And then later on, through, and what made it really special for us is, and I will always say that Nelson and Gene Anderson were a little bit harder on us in wrestling camp because it was their first wrestling camp. But a lot of people don't know later on through that camp, like the second or third camp that came through there, we had, we had the names of like Ken Shamrock and Johnny Ace also come through that wrestling camp as well.
Oh, yeah.
So a lot of guys came through that camp. So that's how we all got to know each other very, very closely around 1986. And it's no secret, Crockett at that particular time, Jim Crockett needed some guys, some underneath guys to come in and work the TVs and, come in there. And because a lot of people don't really fully understand the real, a lot of guys and a lot of fans will say, well, he was just a job guy, this, that, and the other. But if you really ask a good veteran in the business, a good quality underneath talent enhancement guy, they can either make you or break you on television.
Absolutely.
So we all knew what we were there to do. We were there to per se do a job and get the top guys over and make them look good. And with that, we continued to get more work. J.J. Dillon, who was the assistant booker at the time when I was there, and Dusty was the head booker there. J.J., respected our work. He respected our talent. He thought a lot of Nelson and Gene. So when he was able to give us, a few more bookings here and there. So he kept us very busy, while Crockett was running television. We stayed extremely busy, and we picked up some house shows here and there to put some extra money in our pocket. So I've always been very thankful to JJ for keeping us busy back during those times.
Yeah, that's awesome. That is very cool. You just named so many incredible people. It's just like, right. It's just like you're kind of like a punching bag right now. I'm just trying to take all that in. That's amazing. Yeah. All those people that you were around at that time,
Right.
So, like, as far as like your first match, and like, was it for like a certain promotion, or was it through?
Actually, my very, very first match, I was scared to death. I was petrified because I was in the ring. I was tagging with Larry Stevens, L.A. Stevens, and we had our very first match was with the Midnight Express, which was beautiful Bobby Eaton and Loverboy Dennis Condrey. And,
that's awesome.
Nice.
And on the outside of the ring was Big Bubba Rogers and Baby Doll, who was also part of that match as well. So. And Cornette was down at the, I think at the announcer's table, talking with probably with Tony Schiavone at that particular time. But that was my first match, and I was, extremely nervous, and later on, it was funny because I would go back and watch that match. I haven't seen it in quite a few years, but I would go back and look at that match. And, and I don't really remember what I did, but I did something stupid and not knowing the difference. And I could just see a big grin on Bobby Eaton's face like he was just laughing, And, so, but if you got to know Bobby, that was just Bobby. That's just who he was.
Great guy.
But great guy. So that was my first match in my pro wrestling career.
Wow.
Yeah.
I can't believe that it's uphill from there too, man.
That's a memorable first match. And Bobby Eaton, legitimately one of the best workers of all time. I mean,
no question.
And Bobby was just a sweetheart of a guy, and and I could go on and on about, the guys we worked with, and look, guys, it's no secret. There were better guys to work with on television. And, there were some that were not as easy to work with. Anytime you looked at the booking sheet and you saw your name with either the Rock and Roll Express or Jimmy Valiant or a Bugsy McGraw or the Midnight Express, or Jimmy Garb and someone like that, you knew that you were going to be taken care of. And, even a guy like Arn Anderson, another sweetheart of a guy who really tried to work with the underneath guys on television because he knew the value of having a good match on television. He didn't want to go out there unless they were working an angle like a Bash or a War Games or something like that. He didn't want to go out there and just beat the underneath guys up on television.
Right.
He wanted to go out there and have a match if he could. So I was never shy about, if I wanted to suggest something to Arn, he would always try to work it in if he could, a spot maybe that I wanted to do. So just another sweetheart of a guy to work with in the ring that you knew was going to take care of you.
Yeah, that's incredible.
Promotional consideration paid for by the following.
When your investors, customers, and workers demand more from your business, make it happen with SAP. The AI-powered capabilities of SAP can help you streamline costs, connect with new suppliers, and manage payroll, even when your business is being pulled in different directions. To deliver a quality product at a fair price while paying your people what they're worth too, so your business can stay unfazed. Learn more at sap.com/uncertainty.
It's the Smucker's Uncrustables podcast with your host, Uncrustables. Okay, today's guest is rough around the edges. Please welcome Crust.
Thanks for having me.
Today's topic, he's round with soft, pillowy bread.
Hey.
Filled with delicious PB&J.
Are you talking about yourself?
And you can take him anywhere.
Why'd you invite?
And we are out of time.
Are you really cutting me off?
Uncrustables are the best part of the sandwich. Sorry, Crust.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Give Me Back My Pro Wrestling, the podcast that's based on the old school but can still help you find the good stuff from today. Jimmy Street and the Plastic Sheik, Jared, are the undisputed tag team champions of the wrestling podcast world. From thought-provoking topics to superstar interviews to action figure expertise. This team does it all, and all they ask is, give me back my pro wrestling! Every other Thursday, wherever you listen to podcasts.
As a sports fan, I have to confess, sometimes the game gets kind of boring. That's when I unfold my Samsung Galaxy Z Fold 7 and use multi-window viewing on its large screen. Boring game? I'm checking out my fantasy baseball league at the same time. Score still 1-0? I'm replying to emails in the other window, scoring points with the boss. Semifinals finally getting exciting? I'm buying tickets to the finals and booking my flights. Can your phone do that?
The new Galaxy Z Fold 7. Get yours at Samsung.com.
If you thought goldenly breaded McDonald's chicken couldn't get more golden, think Golder, because new sweet and smoky special edition gold sauce is here. Made for your chicken favorites at participating McDonald's for a limited time.
Well, so we do this little thing we like to call the name game. And so to kind of, the way we do it is we say a name and then you kind of bring up a thought or a little story or whatever. And maybe if it jogs a memory, whatever. So DJ, hit the music.
Now it's time to play the name game. Now it's time to play the name game. Now it's time to play the name game.
I'm going to go ahead and start with this one because from my list of matches that I could see, especially the ones that are on TV, this was on December 28th, 1986. You wrestled with Larry Stevens against Ole and Arn Anderson. So talk about those guys.
Yeah, that's a great question, and I do remember something very, very vaguely about that match. It came back to me later, but Ole, of course, knew at the time, and I'm going to tell you that was probably one of my, I had only been in the wrestling business maybe 3 or 4 months at that particular time.
Right.
I had watched Ole growing up as a kid, and so Ole I knew was could be very rough in the ring. So we were standing there kind of at the gorilla position, getting ready to go out. Larry and I were standing there, and Arn and Ole were standing there right in front of us. All of a sudden, Ole takes his fist and he punches a wooden cabinet that sat right there at the gorilla position. And he said, I am in a pissed off mood today, and I'm going to beat somebody's ass out here in this ring today. I am not in a good mood. And I looked at Larry and I said, we're getting ready to get killed. But when we got out there, Ole was just as light as a feather. I mean, he was just as light as a feather. He was just playing a rib on us.
Yeah.
And, because he knew we were green. He knew we were one of the team's guys. So, but he really took good care of us. But I got to tell you, I was very nervous going to the ring.
Ole is one of the best heels of all time. Like just pure heel. Like he is. It's like perfect,
a lot of people don't know this about Ole, but Ole was stabbed right here in Greenville, South Carolina, many years ago, and that knife from when one of the fans stabbed him, just by a split inch, missed his heart. Sure did.
Oh, wow.
Man.
Yeah.
That's scary.
Absolutely.
And these new guys think they got it rough,
Well, there's a difference now. Back in the days when I was, when we were telling, real story, we had storylines that played out for a number of weeks, months, and years at a time. Ole and Gene are what we call heat magnets. And they really, really got a lot of heat. And of course, now the wrestling business has changed so much, they're not really out there trying to get heat anymore. But the angles that they ran back in the day really, really got some fans upset.
Yeah, no kidding.
Yeah.
All right, how about Nikita Koloff?
Wow, Nikita. Yeah, Nikita and I are very close. I haven't talked to him in a while, but Nikita lived pretty close to me in Concord, North Carolina. I got to be very close with Nick back when he owns Nikita's gym in Concord, North Carolina. I was very close with Nick. Nick was married at the time to a young lady down in Alabama which you guys probably know, she ended up developing cancer.
Right.
And he tried to do what he could to try to heal the cancer. And but of course, she ended up passing away. I don't really remember what year that it was, but Mandy ended up passing away after a certain period of time. And but Nick and I have always. I was actually a pallbearer in Mandy's funeral, and that's But Nick and I traveled together on the road quite a bit. I've got a quick Nikita Koloff story.
Please.
So Nikita, he had a Cadillac back in the day, a white Cadillac with tinted windows, and he was going out of town, and he and I were very close. And I said, "Hey Nick, you're going to be out of town." I said, "Can I take your car out if I need to?" Yeah. And he said, "Sure. Yeah. Go ahead, take the car." Well, I took his car and I drove it down to Myrtle Beach, South Carolina. So back during those days, it was no secret. I'm not the same guy that I was back in those days, thank goodness. But I kind of frequented a lot of adult entertainment businesses.
Sure.
And so I had the car, full of the ladies, in the car one night, and we were riding around Myrtle Beach, and so when I finally went back to Concord, Nikita had not been home. And to this day, I still don't know how he found out. But he came up to me and he says, "What are you doing hanging around in Myrtle Beach with adult entertainers hanging out my car window?" And I still to this day never know how he found that out, but he did.
He had his sources in the KGB.
He did. Yeah, he really did. He really did.
Holy cow. Wow. We're starting with an incredible story. There you go. Oh, man. Nikita's a great guy. I got to meet him a couple times. Very nice man.
Yeah.
Very, very
nice guy.
Yeah, absolutely. So the next name on the list is the superstar Bill Dundee.
Superstar Bill Dundee, I was never around Bill too much. I was around him a couple of times in, back for the Crockett's. He came in, and I don't really remember why Dundee was brought in. I do know that Hot Stuff Eddie Gilbert was around some during that time, and Dundee was there as well. I don't know whether it was part of a deal, maybe that Crockett. George South would certainly know more about that than me, but of why they were there in the territory at that time. But Bill was always a solid worker. He was an old school worker, so that is something that I particularly enjoyed, was the old school type of work that we did back in the day. Not all the not all the high flying, we got a hold, we worked it, that sort of thing. So I didn't know Bill real well. I only worked with him a couple of times on television, but that's really the only memories that I have of Bill. I never really got to know him too well.
Yeah. Well, our listener base is a lot of them are in Tennessee. I bring up certain names mainly because of that, And Bill, I've met him a couple times, and every time that he's been in the back, I did a little work as a manager back in about 10 years ago in Nashville, and that's how I met all these wrestlers that I know. And every time he was on a show, and he would be watching a match, he was like, "Oh, they're killing the business. They're killing the business."
That's Bill is very old school. Just like Nelson Royal was. I look at some of the things they do now, and I'm certainly not knocking the business and what it's turned into. It's not necessarily for me, but the way that I was brought up, I was brought up to, back when kayfabe was really alive and well, and I spent my whole career protecting the business and protecting the behind the scenes, the secrets of it, and it's still hard sometimes. To have conversations with certain people about, kind of doing an expose of the business. So
right.
A part of me still feels really strange about talking about some of those things because,
of course,
we just didn't do it. You just don't do it. You just didn't do it. Yeah.
No, and I mean, we're gracious to you for that because a lot of guys are very, very against certain things about it. But, when you've got Jim Cornette, who's probably one of the biggest kayfabe guys ever at the time, telling the whole story, it's kind of hard,
But I remember, we protected the business,
Yes.
Back in the days when I was, if I had just worked an angle with somebody and I happened to be in a gas station with those guys, if we ended up, if they were there before me, I would get back in the car and leave because I did not want to expose the business, or I didn't want to be seen talking with that person that I had just had a match with in in a public place. We just didn't do that.
Yeah. That was the way the business was, man. That's
absolutely.
I think in a lot of ways, I miss that era, in a lot of ways.
Well, and that's what and guys, that's what I tell people. If you never really experienced Jim Crockett Promotions live, what you see on YouTube and maybe on the WWE network and things of that sort just doesn't do it justice. If you really weren't, if you weren't a part of the Great American Bash, if you weren't, if you weren't on the front row watching it, and living it, and breathing it, and traveling with the guys. You just can't really appreciate how over Jim Crockett Promotions territory really was.
Amen.
Yeah. You know something though, those one thing that YouTube at least, and maybe WWE Network or whatever has kept alive is there are so many people influenced by those Ric Flair promos, those Dusty Road promos. I mean, and Jim Cornette, and on that little set in the Atlanta studio there, where you just see all those people cutting promos. Those are big little, like if you go anywhere that just shows clips, you see a lot of those. I mean, just because they're so memorable, and they're so good, and so much better than anything you can see today, honestly.
Yeah.
And I can remember when I see some of those now, I can vividly remember, where because the TBS studio was not a real big studio, and we were there on Saturday mornings at 9 o'clock in the morning filming, and sometimes it was extremely cold in that little building. It was extremely cold, but it was hard to work a crowd in front of in a studio environment like that. It could be a little bit tough at 9 o'clock in the morning. At 9 o'clock in the morning.
I bet.
Yeah.
How about two of the or a tag team that gets like the biggest pop ever, the Road Warriors?
Oh my gosh. I became very, very close with Joe, Road Warrior Animal. I became very close with Joe and, his brother, Johnny Laurinaitis.
Yeah.
And they also have another brother down in Atlanta, Mark Laurinaitis. But I became very close with those guys later on down the road. But another situation that comes to mind is, you cannot fully understand unless somebody was there, or like me who was standing in the ring, when you hear the Road Warriors music coming on and you see those guys busting through the door and they're running at that, that ring 90 miles an hour, and they get up under the ropes and they come in there and they're wild. I mean, they are wide open. And when you get in the ring with them, they're not going to give you anything. If you're working underneath, they're just going to go in there. They're going to beat you up. And, that's just what you're there for. And that's what you did. And, but I remember one time working with those guys, and I don't know that I was the first, but I do know that I was probably one of the first, was when they did that finish. And I don't remember what the name of it was when I got on top of, Animal's shoulders.
Yeah.
And then Hawk would dive off with the clothesline, and Animal would cut you a flip backwards and you land on your stomach.
Right.
I remember the first time I took that on Atlanta TV. I mean, JJ just came busting through the door, and he looked at me and said, "Isley, are you okay? Are you okay?" And I said, "I'm fine." I said, "I'm fine." Yeah. So that was a little bit of a scary move. And so many years later, when the Warriors actually went to the WWF, I had a little more credibility of those guys, back then. So when we ventured up to the WWF to do some underneath, work for those, some TV for WWF, I had a chance to work with those guys again up there. And I remember Animal saying, "Isley, are you in a flipping mood tonight?" And,
no, I'm not.
And I said, "Well, Joe," I said, do I have a choice?" He says, "Not really." And, but at least he was honest about it. So then he said, "No, if you want us to fall back with you, we'll fall back with you." I said, "Yeah, I'd much rather you. I think I'm at the stage of my life now. I'd appreciate if you'd fall back with me when Hawk's coming off the top." So they graciously did that for me and took care of us. So that was all good.
And that was a very rare thing. I know they did that for guys like Ivan and, some of those guys, but they didn't do that a lot. So you can tell they really respected you. Yeah.
But you have to understand that when they got to the WWF, things were a little bit different when they got up there. If I had to, what I'm trying to say is the road agents for the WWF at the time, they were extremely big on taking care of the guys that came there for TV and gave their bodies to the talents, to the top guys. They were extremely saying, "Hey," I mean, I remember, Larry Stevens working with the Ultimate Warrior, and Warrior knocked him out with a clothesline on television. And I vividly remember Jay Strongbow, as soon as Warrior came back through, he was screaming at him, "Do not do that again. If you can't do it right, do not hurt these guys." We did not have that when we were down working for Crockett. They just pretty much just ate us up, and every how we landed, that's how we landed. But it was a different business. It was a different company, and a different time and different place.
Yeah, yeah. Now, is it true that you have a story about Hawk?
Yeah, actually, I do. Hawk. So we were down in Jacksonville, Florida. And I had been in the business a few years now, and actually I was with Tommy Angel when this happened.
Okay.
Back in the days, you could smoke cigarettes, as you guys probably remember. You could smoke cigarettes inside a restaurant.
Right.
So we were sitting in a restaurant, and at the time I was weighing probably 230, 225, 230. Tommy was probably 250. Animal and Hawk both probably close to 300 at that time. And I remember we were sitting at a table, and and some smoke was coming over the back of the from the table beside us, was coming over our booth. And and all of a sudden it got quiet, and Hawk, with that voice of his, he goes, "God, I hate smoke." and some guy who was sitting there kind of leaned over to see who we were. And as soon as he saw the four of us sitting there eating, he took a cigarette and put it out. Yeah. So I remember that very, very clearly. Very clearly. Like
that is awesome.
Yeah.
In some cases, that might have been a fight, but that was not a fight then.
Yeah, well, he would not have been one of the guys that you'd want to pick a fight with.
Right, never. Yeah, never.
No.
It's
He's
funny
not that guy.
It would have, the voice would have probably made me drop it in my drink or something,
Mike was a very intimidating man.
Yeah, I bet.
He was a very, very, and he was so brutally strong. Him and Animal both were just brutally strong, and when they pressed us over their head, we didn't have to help them. I mean, they could do it all on their own. They didn't need us to help them.
Oh, I believe it. I believe that.
Oh, yeah, not at all.
Well, so, okay, the next guys, again, you brought them up a little earlier in your first match, but I kind of want to draw a comparison because 87 was kind of a weird year for the Midnights, especially because they had Bobby and Dennis at the start, and then it was Bobby and Stan at the end. And honestly, it came in and it was seamless. They were great from the start and great from the finish there. But I guess draw a little comparison of Bobby and Dennis versus Bobby and Stan.
Well, they are, and I even had a chance to work with Randy Rose, who was part of the other the Midnight.
Right.
He came in there for a little bit of a short time as well when I was there. But talking with the Midnights of Dennis and Bobby, those guys really just got a lot of heat by themselves. They could really draw the heat. And to me, they seemed much more like the territory tag teams, old school, so to speak.
Yeah.
And then you had kind of that showman come in with Stan Lane, who was part of a very successful tag team with Steve Kern called the Fabulous Ones up in the Memphis area.
Yeah.
So Stan to me was more of that showman type of wrestler. And I think Dennis and Bobby were probably more of the kind of the heat, the drawing the heat type of tag teams.
That makes total sense. Yeah.
Yeah. But Stan, they were both successful. They both had good runs, not taking anything away from either tag team. They were both very easy to work with. But there was a little bit different of a style between the original Midnights and then the ones with Stan and Bobby.
That makes total sense. Yeah. I like that.
Another guy that's just an amazing worker and from a long line of from a family of great talent, Brad Armstrong.
That's a great family right there. I had the privilege of working with all of those guys. I think at some point. Now, I did not have a chance to work with
Brian
BG.
Right.
I did not have a chance to work with him, but I had many matches with Brad and Bullet Bob. I had many chances to work with those guys, and they were always just such smooth in the ring. Bob would be smoking a cigarette before he went to the ring, and you couldn't blow him up. He was in great shape. But Bob and Brad both just, if you ask any old school, wrestler, territory guy, who would you like to have as an underneath guy in your territory? It's always a Brad Armstrong, because he can go in there. If you can't have a good match with Brad Armstrong, something's wrong.
Yeah, no joke.
Yeah, he was that smooth. And I remember one night at the old at the Coliseum. I want to say it was maybe Ranger Ross that had not showed up that night. I happened to be there at one night, and Ranger Ross had not showed up, and Ole had the book at that time, And he asked me, he said, Isley, have you got your gear with you? And I said, I do. He said, well, Ranger Ross isn't here yet. You know, I'm going to give him 10 more minutes. And if he's not, go get your gear. I've got you in the opening match with Arachnoman, which was Brad Armstrong.
Right, right.
So I ended up having that match in the Coliseum with Brad. But Brad was just always such a smooth worker. And I always enjoyed working with, you know, when he was tagging with Timmy Horner. I always enjoyed working with both those guys as the Lightning Express.
Yeah.
Just a super mid-card tag team. Yeah.
Absolutely. Great tag team. I love that Lightning Express. They, you know, I always loved Brad and Bullet Bob. I feel like, you know, Brad is probably as smooth, almost as smooth as Ricky Steamboat in a lot of cases, but he also had that same fire that Bullet had. You know, it's an interesting combination, you know. Brad
was an excellent worker, an extra good seller. He knew how to get the guy over that he was working with.
Yeah.
And I remember being in the ring with him several times when I was first breaking in, and man, he really blew me up. He was he was in that good a shape, and he had a body like a Greek Adonis.
Exactly, and he kept it too. That was the other impressive part, you know.
He really did.
Yeah,
he really did.
Well, the next guy I've got on this list is actually, you know, I've hated this guy before, but I've also cheered for this guy. And he always had that valet with him, Precious, but I always liked it, just Jimmy Garvin. Gorgeous Jimmy Garvin.
You know, I actually had a chance back in Charlotte a couple of years ago. Jimmy and Ronnie were having breakfast at the Hilton there for one of the signings. I had gone to see my good buddy Stan Hansen, and we were having breakfast with those guys. And you know, Jimmy was always just a pleasure to work with in the ring, and he was one of those guys that he was very, very smooth. He's another guy. You know, if you go in the ring with Jimmy, you know that you're going to be taken care of. He was not what we call stiff.
Right.
He could make his stuff really look good, like he was really hurting you, but you know, he was just so smooth in the ring. Now Ronnie, on the other hand, was a little bit more, vicious, and you know, that's just like night and day with Jimmy and Ronnie. They're just totally two different styles of worker.
I'm glad you brought Ronnie up too, because I just watched a match with you and Ronnie, so that was awesome.
You know, and Ronnie was one of those guys that, you know, he could take a beating, and he wanted you to fight him, and if you didn't, he was just going to eat you up.
Yeah,
and that's just the way he was. You know, we tried, but you know, he just ate us up. I mean, that's awesome. Just all there was to it. That was all there was to it. But that was just Ronnie's style. It was nothing against him. That was just his style.
Yeah, yeah.
How about Dick Murdoch?
Murdoch, I probably worked with a few times on television. You know, he was another guy that was extremely smooth. You know, Dickie was old school. You know, he and Dusty were very tight. You know, so you know, Dickie, I remember, had the brainbuster finish. His finish was just so smooth. I mean, it's you know, the way he protected you in the ring, the way he got your neck, and the way you know, when you're, you know, it's like a standing suplex, then you come down for the, you know, for the bump or whatever, but he really took care of you. But Dickie's just one of those old school guys that, you know, he took care of you on television. He was not out there trying to abuse you, not trying to beat you up or, you know, or hurt you. He actually went out there and tried to take care of you. But you got to understand, Dickie was that old school type wrestler. That's just the way they worked. Now, could he hurt you? Absolutely, absolutely. Dickie was, you know, he could be vicious, but he always took great care of me when I was in the ring with him. Always took care of me.
Oh yeah. I always loved those promos when Cornette was managing him and he was paying him like he was kind of like a mercenary for the Midnight Express. Yeah, exactly. And Jimmy would be cutting this promo and he's really into it, and Dick's just standing there laughing, like smiling.
Oh yeah,
he's popping for it, you know.
well, I remember when there was some six-mans being done with Ivan and Dickie Murdoch and Vladimir Pietrov.
Right, right.
And they were doing some tagging, and he knew how how green Vladimir was. He knew it.
Yeah.
And some of the things that he was screaming in the ring at that particular time, I mean, I remember you can, if you watch this particular match, you can hear the fans out there really giving him a hard time. And, he screams at the top of his lungs, "Hey, Tony, can you shut these kayfabens up out here?" And, that's the way Dickie was, just laughing and having a good time in the ring. But a lot of people never saw that because we protected the business. But Dickie was just a super, super good guy.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's awesome. Okay, well, the next team is definitely probably my favorite tag team of all time from being a child, the Rock and Roll Express.
Oh, my gosh. We could talk about those guys forever. Ricky and Robert. And I still, my phone still rings from Robert from time to time, and we still keep in touch. And, they're just a tag team that if you never experience them live, you can't appreciate how over those guys were in the territory.
Right.
There's no telling, how many of those rock and roll posters they sold back in the day, the merchandise sales, what we had back at that time were probably astronomical. The numbers they probably did. But as far as two nice guys and protecting you and taking care of you in the ring, you won't find two better guys than Ricky Morton and Robert Gibson. You just won't. And those guys were just such great baby faces. The way Ricky Morton sold a move or he sold a hold. It's like Ricky told me one time. He said, I can sell an arm bar like I'm on the way to the electric chair. Right. So you just won't find two better baby faces than Ricky and Robert. You just won't. Not as a solid babyface tag team. One of the best.
Yeah. Absolutely. No question. And so the next two guys, I'm going to go ahead and bring them up because here's the thing. You guys were known as, Tommy Angel, Larry Stevens, Rick Nelson. You guys were kind of like, I would say like a second era of the underneath guys who kind of looked a little more compatible with the guys that were on TV. These guys, however, we remember George South. I got to throw George in there. Love George. Yeah. But these two guys right here actually were kind of that original crew that stayed around and actually ended up winning a match and going to the Crockett Cup. Yeah. Brandy and Bill Mulkey.
The Mulkeys, I haven't seen those guys in a long time. They used to live right down here in Anderson, South Carolina. And Mulkey Mania, I remember I had gotten my shoulder separated, so I was on the sidelines at home for about 8 weeks. And I remember when they had that match with the Gladiators and they won on television that night. Right. I was actually on the card that night when they sold out the Anderson Civic Center when they had that match against the Midnight Express.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah, I was myself and Larry Stevens were on that card that night, and we had a nice payoff that night because back then, we did. We got paid on how many people showed up, not on a contract basis. So
right.
Yeah. So the more people that were there, the better we got paid. So the Mulkeys were, that was just something different. It was good to see. It was good for the business at that particular time. And the people loved it.
Yeah, they definitely did. We popped, and that was Gary Royal and George South, right? Am I correct about that? Yeah.
Two fantastic workers. You can't say enough about George and Gary as far as workers. Gary, gorgeous Gary Royal, came in from the Kansas City territory, and he was a former NWA junior heavyweight champion. Something else a lot of people don't know about Gary is that if you go back and watch Starrcade, or when Piper and Valentine were having the dog collar match, Gary was the manager right in the ring there with Valentine, right at the opening of that match.
Wow. So, okay.
With the bleach blonde hair.
Very cool. Very cool.
He had a suit on. So Gary was just another great worker. I can't even tell you how many times I've worked with Gary in the ring, but just such a night off, just such an easy. He and I just always had very smooth matches. But when you say that, you've also got to say again too, if you can't have a good match with George and Gary,
right,
something's wrong. Right, something's wrong. Yeah.
I literally just talked to George the other day, and he was just coming off of his table at WrestleCade, and he was doing a favor for me, recording a clip, and he was like, brother, I can't talk, but I'm coming off this to do this for you. And if George South left his table, you mean something to him. So
that's exactly 100% correct. If he's going to leave that gimmick table for a minute, you must be special.
Yeah, well, I felt that. He's a great guy. Yeah, I hope that we'll have him on soon, hopefully, because, we can't have you guys on and not have George on, right? So
that's exactly right. But George, I remember George, when we, tell you a quick story about us going, and, this maybe is something you guys want to talk about, but I remember when we got to do, we were invited up to do television for the WWF, and George was part of that crew with us. And as soon as we walked in the door, Vince McMahon walked up to us and thanked us for coming. He called us by name, which we were all surprised at. He called us by name, and we're like, how in the world does he know who we are? And, it's like George said, look, we're his competition down there with the Crockett's. He knows, that's his business, is to know what's on television for the other product. So he knew all of us, and that's why we were invited to come up and work on the television up there. But they were so happy to have us, Tommy may have told you this before, but we were getting ready to leave that night, and Bobby Heenan walked up to us. There were 6 of us, and he handed us a $100 bill, and he said, "Guys, I know this isn't much, but split it amongst you and have a beer on me on the way home." We appreciate you guys. So appreciate you guys coming up here and making our guys look good on television, because if you've got a bunch of crappy underneath talents, enhancement guys on television, your show's going to look terrible.
Right.
But if you've got some that, they know what they're doing, they know how to have a match, it just makes the program so much better. Now, if you ask a guy like Ricky Morton, if you ask him, say, well, who was the best worker in the territory back in the Crockett days? And he said, look, that's a big question. He said, everybody could work back, who was on the card back in those days.
Yeah.
All the way from the top guys down to the underneath job guys. They all knew how to have a match. So it's just that some got more television time than others. But that's just the way it worked out. We knew what we were there to do. We knew we had a job there to do, and I feel like that. With my best work came after I left Crockett, after I left WCW, and I went into Japan and became close with Stan Hansen. And, that's when I really learned how to work, was after I left, and got away from doing televised matches.
Yeah. Well, I promise we'll get there, brother. It's coming soon. Well, we got just a little bit more here. Go ahead, Jared.
How about the total package, Lex Luger?
Yeah, Lex was another guy that, he had a body like $1 million.
Mm-hmm.
Lex was not the most technical wrestler in the world.
Right.
And I think he would tell you the same thing, but he knew the talents that he has. His body was just unbelievable. That's why they called him the total package. He's another guy that really protected the underneath guys on television. He never, ever hurt me one time. Never, ever. He was so easy to work with in the ring. And when you see him now, he's so appreciative of, he may not remember your face or your name, but if you tell him, hey, we worked, television with each other, many times back in the Crockett days, he says, look, I don't remember it, but I just want to say thank you. He said, you guys put your bodies on the line for us night in and night out. He said, I just want to say thanks. That's awesome. That's always nice to hear.
Yeah. Yeah. No doubt. No doubt.
And now a word from our sponsor.
As a scientist, I can tell you that Sundays are only 24 hours long. But with NFL Sunday Ticket and YouTube TV, you get every game every Sunday all in one place. That's upwards of 30 hours of NFL in one day. How can there be 30 hours in 24 hours, you ask? I have a theory. Magic. New users get NFL Sunday Ticket for 8 payments of $34.50 per month. Sign up at NFLSundayTicket.com. Local and national games on YouTube TV. NFL Sunday Ticket for out-of-market games excludes digital-only games and commercial use. Terms and embargoes apply. Availability varies.
Good night, itchy eyes. Good night, sudden sneeze.
Good night to your symptoms of allergies. Zysol is the allergy medicine you take before bed. It provides powerful relief while you rest your head. Not just all night, but all the next day. Zysol keeps working, keeping allergies at bay. And without those annoying symptoms disturbing your rest, you can wake up the next morning feeling your absolute best. Remember, be wise all. Take Zysol. At night.
New Vitamin Water Zero Sugar Pineapple Passion Fruit is packed with vitamins. Just like the amount of peas we packed in that sentence. It's packed like your tote bag. The one you stole from your ex. Or your overpriced half a studio apartment. Or extra rushed rush hour traffic. Packed like your calendar. Triple booked at 5, of course. Grab a Vitamin Water. Did we mention it's packed with vitamins?
Hey, my name is Tammy Reynolds. I am the wife of Forsaken Rick Reynolds, that super cool guy that everybody knows and loves. And I represent West Side Sauces. I make sauces, I bottle them, I seal them, I sell them. I have a hot honey sauce, I have a sweet sauce, I have a hot sauce, I have a white sauce that's so yummy you can use it on everything. They are absolutely amazing and I'm so proud of them. We make them from scratch. So go on our website, westsidesauces.com, check out our products, read about our story, and go online and order you some of these yummy sauces. And Rick actually uses all of the sauces because he is a die-hard smoker and griller, and so he likes really good sauces and rubs, and I make them, so how convenient is that for him? Go on our website, westsidesauces.com, order you some samples, and I think you'll thoroughly enjoy them. Thank you guys. Be blessed.
Well, Jared brought up one of them, and then we've talked about Ole and Arn, but I want to bring up the Four Horsemen as a whole. How was that being around that crew, man?
You had Ole and Arn and Flair. You had Tully in there at that particular time. Nobody can really fully understand the magnitude of how over the Four Horsemen really were. That whole era of the Four Horsemen was just unbelievable. They did Crockett did incredible business. Anytime that we were on the card where we were paid, by the people who were there buying a ticket, we always knew we were going to have a good payday.
Yeah.
But nobody can really appreciate how over the Four Horsemen were, the original Four Horsemen. They just don't have a clue of really how popular those guys were back in the day, and how much heat those guys got. I mean, a guy like Tully Blanchard, it's like they say, he got heat in the dressing room with the guys. so you knew he could draw heat with the people out in the audience. So just a tremendous era that if you never experienced it live, you just can't fully appreciate it.
Yeah, no doubt.
This other group, they were heat magnets of their own, the Fabulous Freebirds. Yeah, Michael Hayes and Gordy. I got very close with Terry when I was in Japan, but and matter of fact, Mike works behind the scenes now for the WWE, and he was actually my son had called me recently and wanted to take my grandson to see a match up in Charlotte for TV, and I had sent Michael an email to his WWE account and said, hey, if you got time to see us for a few minutes, great. If you don't, I know you're busy. But he wrote me back, within about, maybe 3 or 4 minutes, said, hey, Dave, great to hear from you. He said, TVs are kind of hard to manage. And, if I have a chance to catch up with you, don't expect me to, but, the best time to see me is like at a house show or something like that. But you couldn't ask for two better guys, as far as Terry Gordy and Michael Hayes, as far as guys in and out of the ring. But I'm going to tell you one thing. Terry was a rough man. I would put him up. I would put him up against anybody. All I can say is thank God he liked me. When he was tagging with Dr. Death,
those were two rough individuals, and I'm so thankful they took care of me. And but you just can't imagine the strength of Terry Bam Bam Gordy. You just can't.
Oh no, I have no doubt. Golly, I love those guys though. They were the Rock and Roll Express had their own rock and roll vibe, but they were like rock stars too, man. Those Freebirds,
I remember the Freebirds when they were, kind of in the Georgia territory. I never really got to witness them too much when they were working for the Von Erichs out in Texas. I saw matches of it, and I saw the crowds they drew out there. But I never really got to experience that. But I did see them when they were here working for Georgia. And that's another territory that they really popped really hard was for the Georgia Championship Wrestling.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, the next guy on our list, and I think you know this guy pretty well, but I always thought, there's all these guys that if you were to draw him, I would just say, hey, Dave, draw a pro wrestler. You could easily draw Lex Luger. You could draw Hawk and Animal. You could draw Sting. You could draw Sid. But this guy, I always thought if you drew a pro wrestler and just drew what you thought, I think you would draw him as Todd Champion.
Yeah, Todd had an incredible look. Todd was a very big guy.
Yeah.
Todd was about 6 foot, 6'5", 6'6", maybe. 275, 280 pounds. Former football player for the Rams and former college football player for Utah. And Todd and I were very, very close. Todd and I hung out together quite a bit outside of the ring. We traveled together quite a bit. I remember vividly about Todd is, sometimes I would have when he and I were riding down the road together after a match, I would be in the passenger seat, and if he saw me dozing off and sleeping, he'd slam on brakes and then wake me up. So Todd was another great guy that I really enjoyed, being around in and outside of the ring. He had a successful little run with Curtis Thompson, who was Firebreaker Chip, and they did the little I can't remember the tag team they had, maybe down in WCW for a while, but they had a good little run together for a while. But Todd, just a super guy in and out of the ring, lives down in Atlanta, Georgia now. He and I do still keep in touch, and I'm thankful that we're able to do that. But what a big guy he was, and just incredibly strong.
Yeah.
Todd was another guy who was just incredibly strong.
Absolutely.
How about the Warlord?
Oh man, I loved him. Terry, another guy that, brutally strong in the gym. I mean, I have seen this guy personally myself. I've witnessed it, him doing behind the neck presses with 315 pounds. And
golly.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. He was just a monster of a man, but the tag team with him and the Barbarian, just another, the Powers of Pain or whatever, just a super, super sweetheart of a guy, but just incredibly strong. But he's another guy, just light as a feather, wouldn't hurt you for anything. He just would not, none of his moves hurt. I mean, they were all super easy to take.
Yeah. Let me ask you this. Being that you're buddies with the Road Warriors, and now when they put the Powers of Pain together, I think what we saw it as was the evil Road Warriors. How did you guys take the two tag teams that were massive monsters that almost looked almost similar,
That's watching those four guys go at it in the ring, I felt sometimes with the Road Warriors, you either loved them or you hated them.
Right.
And the Warriors, people just really got behind that gimmick.
Yeah.
I mean, that gimmick of theirs was so over that, you would have everybody in the building cheering for the Warriors. But when you had the Powers of Pain, then you had Uncle Ivan Koloff who managed them, or maybe Paul Jones managed them a little bit at one time.
A little bit both, yeah. Yep, exactly.
Yeah, a little bit of both. It was very believable because you had four men that were just incredibly big, and you just wanted to see who was going to win as far as who was the strongest of the four. And I don't think at that particular time, if I was going to put my money on somebody, you they were all strong individuals, but a guy like the Barbarian and the Warlord and Road Warrior Animal, they were just so freaking strong. I mean, it's unbelievable the feats of strength they did in the gym. I mean, the bench presses they did, but you've got guys like Hawk and Animal who came out of that whole clan of up there in Minnesota with Eddie Sharkey's group up there. Rick Rude came out of that. Kurt Hennig, they all came out of that Minnesota territory up there. But just, man, 4 incredibly strong men. And I saw them working out in the gym many times, and my eyes were just amazed every time I saw them working out.
No doubt. Yeah. Well, this next one, it's so funny. We've been talking about all these towering big men, but this next guy was never what you would say towering. Always had a great body about him, though, and an evil persona in Kevin Sullivan.
Kevin, I never really, I'll tell you a quick story about Kevin. So he was very snug in the ring. He was another guy that really did not give a whole lot of the underneath guys on television. He did not really give us a whole lot on television. George will be the first. George South will be the first to tell you that, when he hung you upside down in that tree of woe, and when you see him coming at you across the ring, you better cover up a little bit because he doesn't care. He didn't care how he landed when he came to hit you in the turnbuckle with that finishing move. You better take care of yourself. And but Kevin, I was actually down at the TBS studio one time, and back in those days, there were showers. There was a hallway of showers, a few dressing rooms, but at the end of the hall, that's where some of the ladies dressed. And I remember Missy Hyatt was sitting down there at the end of the hall. I was coming out of the shower. I mean, I had a towel and my flip flops on. Missy was sitting down there at the end of the hallway. Well, Kevin Sullivan walks by me. He yanks my towel off of me.
Oh my gosh!
Yeah. So I'm standing there. I'm standing there butt naked in the hallway. Missy Hyatt's looking at me, and I'm trying to bend down and get my towel and kind of cover up. And I'll never forget that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Never forget that.
Wow.
Right.
Oh goodness! All right, the next name or names, I guess I should say, is the Sheep Herders. But a lot of people might know them as the Bushwhackers. So
two great guys to work with in the ring. Two smooth guys. I'll tell you a quick story about them. They had just given their notice to Crockett. They were leaving the Crockett territory, going to work for the WWF. Actually, Tommy and I were tagging with. Together that on television down in Atlanta against the Sheep Herders. And I remember those guys coming up to us because they liked us. They liked us a lot. And I remember them coming up to us and say, guys, let's have some fun tonight. And I said, what do you got in mind? He said, we're going to let you, this is our last match before we, on TV, before we go to work for the WWF. We're going to let you throw us around a little bit tonight. So Tommy and I were in there. We were slamming them on television. We were getting a few of our spots in, and I could hear Jimmy Crockett. We're walking through the curtain back in the back, and I overheard Jimmy saying, "Who in the hell let them do that?" But nothing he could do about it. But that's just the way those guys were. They were probably. I don't know the reason why they left, but. They let me and Tommy throw them around that night on television a little bit, which probably did not go over real well with Jimmy Crockett.
Right. Well, I've interviewed Luke before, and he told the story about it, how he said one day at the studios, he got a call, and it was from Pat Patterson. And he said, you mean we're going to do that, and we're not going to be the same brutal tag team we've been in the territories? So we're going to get paid what you're telling me, and we're going to have a pretty easy doing a comedy gimmick. Yeah, I think we'll do that.
Right. So, yeah. I mean, that's a no-brainer. Right.
Yeah, because the Sheep Herders were a brutal tag team, and then I see them as the Bushwhackers, and I'm like, holy cow, these guys have really calmed down, A
lot of bloodbaths those guys had down in Puerto Rico.
No doubt. Yeah. Well, the next guy on the list, he comes up so much through your match history that I wanted to bring him up here because this was, I think, your first match with him was Mike Rotunda.
Yeah, Mike, I had a lot of singles matches with Mike, and I had a lot of tag matches with Mike. I always got along extremely well with Mike because Mike was very good friends and still is with Denny Brown down in Florida, in St. Pete. So I knew Mike very well from Denny, and he always took care of me on television. But Mike was just another guy, super, super collegiate wrestler out of Syracuse. He could wrap you up and tie you up like a pretzel. He was always pretty quiet, but he was one of those guys you didn't want to try him in the ring because he could really wrap you up and hurt you. But Mike, just a super incredible guy. I can't say enough positive things about Mike. Just a super, super good guy to work with in the ring. Just a solid mat technician, so to speak. You put him in the ring with a guy like him and Mark Fleming. I don't know who's going to. I wouldn't know who to put my money on that one. Two rough and tough guys, but for all intents and purposes, Mike was just a super incredible athlete.
That's awesome. This brings up a question because we're bringing up a lot of these guys, and this is kind of basically around the time that Crockett purchases UWF from Bill Watts. Tell me how you felt about that. Did you have any concerns about your job at that time? You're working some great guys, but. Yeah,
we saw what I really thought of at the time is after we kind of got the full story of what was going on, back Crockett had the Crockett show, but then he also had the UWF show, which he kept going for a while. So we were able to kind of get some double work, so to speak. So really, we had already established our name at that particular time. And we actually saw it as a benefit for us because, Crockett needed us. I mean, he needed us to be on television. He had to switch us up a little bit from time to time, but we just saw it as an opportunity to get more work. And that's kind of what we were there for. We wanted to work more, wanted to make more money. It was an easy transition for us. I think that's when Steiner and Sting and some of those guys were brought in from the UWF at the time. But to me, it was just an opportunity for us to get more work and to make more money.
Well, that's awesome. I mean, that's all you can ask for, I think. Correct. In the long run of things, Yeah. So the next guy I want to bring up is probably another one of these insanely strong guys. I'm going to guess is Ron Simmons.
Oh my God, yeah, Ron, just another. I remember working with Ron early on in his career, and Ron was just so brutally strong. When Ron would throw me into the rope, he would just shove me so hard I would lose my balance sometimes because he was just his adrenaline was so high and he was so strong. And I remember telling him, hey, don't shove me so hard. Just push me and I'll go. I'll run for you and I'll come back. There's no need for you to sling me into the ropes because I'll get there. But it just makes us both look bad if you do that. So he understood, about working. He understood. So he just needed to relax a little bit more. But my gosh, he turned into be such an incredible athlete.
No joke. Yeah, no joke. No joke.
But his strength alone was just impeccable. I mean, he was just stupid strong.
Yeah, yeah. I've heard a story about him in a bar fight, and he had a broken arm, and he was still handling the guy easily with just his one arm. So
he's another guy that I, you're very thankful if he likes you. I would not want to place him in a dark alley. Yeah. I wouldn't want to do that. Yeah.
Well, the next one on the list is actually this guy. I think is one of my all-time favorites, but it's because he was just another one of those that seems so athletically gifted and smooth as Barry Windham.
Yeah, I mean, you can't say enough good things about Barry. I mean, his work at that particular time when I was around Barry, when you say smooth, that's literally goes hand in hand with Barry Windham. His work was just, gosh, guys. I mean, you just can't. He's just another guy that if you're going to go into the ring with him, he's going to give you a little bit in the match. He's going to make you look good. He's going to beat you in the end, but he's going to make you look good a little bit too, like you beat somebody, right?
Right, exactly. Yeah.
Exactly. So, but Barry just, his work ethic alone was just incredible. I mean, he was so smooth in the ring, but I'm just always thankful that, that I had a chance to meet his father at one point.
Wow.
Blackjack Mulligan.
That's
I was
awesome.
I never had a chance to work with Blackjack, but, growing up as a kid and seeing Blackjack, on television, that really made my day. And, when I was able to walk up to his father and say, hey, I was such a huge mark for Blackjack Mulligan when I was growing up, and I just wanted to say thanks. And
that's awesome.
But just such a great family, but two very smooth workers. But Barry and Kendall both. I mean, I never really knew Kendall that well, but I got to know Barry a little bit from his time with the Crockett's. But just what a smooth worker in the ring.
Well, you did work Kendall though. How were they? Pretty smooth, pretty similar.
Yeah, I mean, I would say. I mean, look, Kendall his talent was never as good as Barry's.
Right.
Barry was just on another different level. Kendall was good to work with, not taking anything away from Kendall, but Barry was just in a league of his own, man. He was so smooth.
And I don't want to say anything negative either, but any light about these guys, but it was like they were the tallest, leanest dudes, and they always wore the smallest trunks. It was like their thing, man. But
well, I tell you what, man, Barry, the women loved Barry back in the day.
Oh, no doubt. Yeah, I bet.
Yeah. They loved Barry back in the day.
Yeah, I believe every bit of that. Yeah.
Right.
I know my female cousins were big fans of him. Let's just say that.
Oh yeah. I mean, what young girl didn't like a blonde-headed, blue-eyed young man? I mean, who during that time? I mean, who wouldn't love that?
Right. And he always had those awesome boots. We're big fans of Barry Windham for sure.
Absolutely.
So, so the next guy I'm going to bring up was actually part of that coming over from UWF, and you brought up his sometimes on again, off again lady, Missy Hyatt there, but I'd love to hear a little bit about Hot Stuff Eddie Gilbert.
Yeah, Eddie was just I never really got to know Eddie too much because I don't remember what year he passed away.
Right.
But Eddie, I got to know him a little bit, just working in the locker room there a little bit, and I had a couple of matches with him, and just another. He was a guy that had such a mind for the business. Eddie had booked territories before. I think he maybe had booked down in Puerto Rico some.
Yeah.
But he had a really creative mind for the wrestling business, and just another guy that was extremely. And he was not a big guy. Eddie was he was not a big guy. But one thing that I do remember about him, he had one of the prettiest drop kicks that I had ever seen.
Yeah,
and that's one thing that I do remember about Eddie is that smooth drop kick of his.
Yeah, Eddie, we had to bring him up because of our Tennessee listeners, of course, but he's definitely an acolyte of Lawler. He definitely had those elements about him, but he also had his own thing about him. Jared and I often discuss, and we may even make it an episode in the future about what would he be doing had he not passed away?
Yeah,
I feel like one of the two big companies would be having him in their offices, I'm sure.
That's a great point. And, I could have easily seen him in a, kind of, and I don't know whether he was ever part of Smoky Mountain or did anything with that. I don't really remember. But, since you guys have got a lot of Tennessee listeners, you can't talk about Tennessee and not talk about Nature Boy Buddy Landell.
Amen. Yeah.
There's another Tennessee guy right there who was just another smooth operator in the ring. I mean, he was just another mat technician, and if you couldn't have a good match with Buddy, well, something was wrong. But
that was your fault.
Yeah, absolutely right. Just another good Tennessee guy right there.
That's great. I'm glad you brought him up. There's a funny story. Jared, were you with me the night that I went to watch wrestling up at the Southwest Virginia Community College?
I don't remember that.
I don't think you were. Well, anyway, one night he had the main event of the match, and my buddy who I was with, he said, "Hey, do you want to go to the locker room?" And I'm like, "I don't think we need to do that. I don't think we should." He's like, "No, I work here. My dad works up here. I can go anywhere I want." I said, okay. And we go in the men's locker room, and of course, all the wrestlers are in there. And as we open the door, Buddy's standing there, and I can't tell if he has trunks on or not. He has his boots on, he has a shirt on, and that's all that it looks like he has on. And he's yelling about something, and he sees the door open, stops. He says, "Hey fellas, how y'all doing? Did you enjoy the show? Thank y'all for coming out." And we like realized we should not be in there. We closed the door, and as soon as we closed the door, he says, "Hey Tommy, I thought you said you had somebody on the door. Man, we've got guys coming in left and right." It was so funny because he was going off. He stopped when he saw us, gave us the "thank y'all for coming out," and we closed the door, and he starts going back off. Man, that was just, it was like,
his personality, I mean, there's just a guy, you can't help but love the guy. I mean, he's another one of those guys I think about all the time. I mean, he always crosses my mind periodically when I'm thinking about wrestling. But Buddy Landell was just a great human being. It's so sad that he's not with us anymore, but just another incredible talent that that I had such a good time being in the ring with him.
Absolutely, I believe that every bit. Yeah, that's awesome. I'm so glad you brought him up. Thank you.
Relive the glory days of Memphis wrestling with the Retro Wrestling Review USWA podcast. Each week, we go back in time to review USWA Championship Wrestling from the 1990s, episode by episode. Join us for watch-alongs, behind-the-scenes stories, and exclusive interviews with people who were there and lived it. Whether you grew up watching it or you're discovering it for the first time, this podcast is your ringside seat to Memphis wrestling history. It's all a part of the WrestleCopia Podcast Network. Listen now at USWApodcast.com.
Hi, this is Mike Needham, host of the Reckless Abandon Podcast with Mike Needham. We invite you to jump on your favorite podcast platform and search for the Reckless Abandon Podcast and give us a listen. I'm sometimes joined by a part-time podcaster, part-time co-host, and full-time wife, Tiffany Nicole. We talk wrestling, we talk pop culture, we talk local events, local happenings in West Tennessee, and a ton of other stuff. But be sure to check out the Reckless Abandon Podcast. Find us on Facebook. Also, look up the Microgroup Podcasting family on Facebook and see some of our other podcasts we have out there. Until next time, make good choices and always remember, no dollar, no dice.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is Jimmy Street, and that was episode 17 of the Best of James Rock Street Productions with the first half of episode 49 of David Isley on Gimme Back My Pro Wrestling. David is one that we were able to get through our buddy Tommy Angel. He was awesome and has some great stories to go with it. You can hear the full episode and more over on @GMBMPW or Gimme Back My Pro Wrestling wherever you listen to podcasts, or simply click the link in the notes below. We hope you've enjoyed a look back in the archives of James Rock Street Productions. Check us out next week to see what else we have in store. Until then, follow @GMBMPW and @JamesRockStreet everywhere. Peace.
With a tear in my eye, this is the greatest moment in my life.
We'll see you later.
This has been a James Rock Street production.